All right, my former co-host and great documentary filmmaker of Loose Change, Jason Bermas, takes over on X. Jason Bermas, he's loaded for bear. Jason, can't wait to hear what you have to say, my friend. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. Today we're going to be focusing on two aspects of the Epstein files. One in particular, the quote-unquote 9/11 Shadow Commission that J. Edward Epstein, a journalist that has, well, I guess you could call him a journalist, also an MIT professor, same school as Noam Chomsky, that is very much in the field of narrative management with connections to the Central Intelligence Agency, and this is more than likely why Ghislaine Maxwell was actually contacted. And then to show these networks, to show people how this actually works, and has for many times, someone, we don't know who because they're redacted, going to Jeffrey Epstein about a new membership in the quote-unquote Zodiac Club, which I had no idea about, which has all the occultic undertones that we've become accustomed to, but it also shows who these people are: bigots and racists and narrative managers. So let's start right now with the 9/11 Shadow Commission email, and subsequently what I was able to find out about what this commission actually was. So here in January of 2003, you have J. Edward Epstein, and you'll notice there's a couple of URLs there, asking Ghislaine Maxwell, who again portrays herself as Little Miss Innocent. No, far from it. Remember, her father, not only a super spy, but his big thing was narrative management through his newspaper and media empire. Any interest on being the Shadow Commission on 9/11? The membership list is a secret. And as of now, I don't know any of the other names that were on this commission that absolutely took place. And how do I know it took place? Well, number one, this is the time period they're putting the initial commission together. Remember, they headed it with Henry Kissinger, but a lot of people forget his underling was going to be George Mitchell, a politician that we've known connected to Epstein for well over a decade now. And yes, he is accused of some of the most heinous crimes in there. George Mitchell actually stepped down from that commission seat before Henry Kissinger did. So this is a screenshot from Epstein's website, and this is J. Edward Epstein, again, not Jeffrey, from March of 2001. And we have so many of the limited hangout aspects. Was there a military chain of command failure on September 11th? Was there security failures, etc., etc., etc.? Now, it's going to be noted in a moment that this guy was also huge lobbying for Israel, just like Jeffrey Epstein, just like Les Wexner. In fact, when you look at some of the questions, even though he's questioning here Ari Fleischer opening about the use of box cutters. And by the way, the use of box cutters on 9/11, the evidence is very, very minuscule. Instead, what you actually had in that situation was you had a multitude of reports that there were actually weapons planted on planes, and even with Flight 11, a gun being used in those hijackings. So this guy's role for decades, J. Edward Epstein, has been questioning things like the John F. Kennedy assassination. He wrote several books on that, but when push came to shove, for instance, in 2008, and by the way, Epstein, I believe, passed away in 2024, when he's asked about the JFK assassination 40 years later, he's the guy that will say something like, after 40 years, none of the theories pan out. Aside from questioning the box cutters on 9/11, we have him here also questioning whether or not crop dusters were going to be used. There were a couple of reports on that. So what this guy does a lot of the time is he seems like the dissident, but in a very limited fashion. In fact, you could coincide this guy with a guy like Noam Chomsky that will tell you about manufacturing consent, but if you dare ask about Building 7, he won't have it, and he wants to make sure that if you're not willing to take bioweapon injections from an authoritarian government, well, you need to be separated from society. So here's another thing I found about Epstein And then we're going to kind of move on from that network and some of the other reportings on 9/11 and how the Epstein files seem to have a huge gap in that 9/11 window, pre 9/11 and post 9/11. Now, remember, we have what? 3+ million pages of files, and they've admitted to 2.5 million more. We're going to show you that evidence in a moment. But just like I said, this guy questioning certain aspects of the 9/11 attacks, he actually also did a actually very good piece. In fact, maybe I read this on, back in the day when I was at InfoWars, because it's 2010, on the Anthrax attacks, where they're admitting to a ton of the anomalies. Now, one of the really interesting things about this is that Epstein supposedly is currently completing a book on the 9/11 Commission. So this guy was deep in that type of narrative management. However, that book never came out. He did write a book apologizing for CIA Director James Angleton and asking whether he was right. Now, I want to skip to another email that we have to be careful of here. Now, I've talked about this on a lot of my broadcasts surrounding these files, because you have emails like the one I showed you that are directly to and from Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, Sarah Palin, Leslie Groff, all the real associates, right? And a lot of those people are protected big time. Now, in this one, it's a 2020 email. So now you have the hotline, you have the new open investigations. There are a lot of documents in there that are important. Now, this one, I'm on the fence, okay? But it does mention two big things that connect in relation to 9/11 and Iran-Contra. Very similar network, a network that I believe is connected. And if we get those extra Epstein files, it's going to become more and more apparent about that connection. So the subject is Khashoggi connects to Epstein. I just mentioned Iran-Contra, and I'm going to show you that it's not just Khashoggi and Epstein in Iran-Contra. It's a guy named Douglas Lease, and it's also a guy named Stanley Pottinger that he's connected to. Khashoggi is actually the guy that kind of inspires Epstein's harem activity. A lot of people forget that Khashoggi, the arms dealer, had a harem of his own. Do you guys think that the Middle Eastern harem was carding girls at 18 to make sure they were a part of it? Of course not. He was also an abuser of young girls. In fact, Epstein, previous to this, is dating powerful people's daughters to kind of get into place. And then that changes after the Khashoggi relationship. So I bring this up because, again, this is like one of those emails where we do have a response that says, "Received, thank you." We don't know who it's from. We know what the subject line is, but it's not well written. It's almost like in this weird coded stuff. But here it says, if there is a grand jury on 9/11/01 and Epstein, then Berman knows they connect. Okay? So when we're talking about 9/11 altogether, we are talking about a international intelligence operation with role players in the United States, he's connected to, Saudi Arabia, he's connected to. I'm about to show you that connection in a moment. And of course, Israel. Okay? So, for instance, and he continues to be, there's the spy email out there. They caught our spy after she achieved her mission. And they talk about torturing her. Did they torture her? Oh, okay. So this is between Sultan bin Salem in 2010. And this is to Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. I am attaching some media clippings regarding the Israeli operation in Dubai. I will call you around 7 p.m. Eastern time. What happened today doesn't help anybody. Okay. Now, the operation he's talking about is the assassination of this Hamas official. And in this video, you can go check it out on Charlie Rose. We're not going to play it. We're kind of limited on time. I've got other videos that we're going to play. But they show you the assassination team, the Israeli assassination team. And obviously, Jeffrey Epstein is being contacted at that point because he is in this network. Now, this guy is J. Edward Epstein, and he is running narrative management on the Charlie Rose show as to Israel's role in this assassination. That's what these people do, okay? So I wanted to get into the 9/11 files that seem to be missing, okay? Because, again, if you look at this from the data set of 9, right, there seems to be a huge gap in the correspondences. And then, and this is in 95 to 98. Now, one of the reasons that could be outside of 9/11, I want to make this very clear, is years and years ago, I interviewed Maria Farmer. Now, Annie Farmer is one of the faces you see, one in court, the whole nine. And Maria Farmer had made the claim she went to the FBI on Epstein and nothing was done. And it wasn't until these data dumps that started to come out, right, that we found out that that file absolutely existed. So there is a possibility that there was a whole nother investigation during this time period that we really have no insight into. But then when you look at the financials that seem to be gone, all right, and then you look at the sequences that are missing. The sequence resumes at SDNY 042000. Okay, this is a manual excision of roughly 15,000 ledger lines. All right, and then basically, when you look at that, it shows you a picture that they are absolutely hiding information there. Now, why would they do that? Okay. This article right here came out just as the DOJ released their first 4 data sets. And this is a piece by several New York Times journalists, and I want to make it clear that it is also limited hangout. Scams, schemes, ruthless cons, the untold story of how Jeffrey Epstein got rich. They try to establish right away, hey, I know there's all these conspiracy theories that he had intelligence connections, but those are just conspiracy theories. Then it goes on to tell you in 2 subsequent sections that number 1, he went on the road with defense contractor and arms dealer Douglas Lease, who took him under his wing. That's right after Bear Stearns. He still has all those connections. So he learned that trade from Douglas Lease on the road. Now remember, he has that fake passport at that time as well that we know from these files that was issued from Austria that had a what? Saudi Arabian address. These are the connections, folks. Okay, you understand? And then Pottinger. Let's get into him. So Stanley Pottinger was a lawyer guy and a businessman that was heavily involved in Iran-Contra, heavily involved in narrative management. And Johnny Vedmore did a great piece called the Pottinger Ultimatum. There was a bunch of them. And he showed how Pottinger and Jeffrey Epstein were sharing like office space together. Well, this article not only shows that they shared office space together, it can be the first time they can be admitted they were in business together. 2 more guys from Iran-Contra. Gets better. Pottinger actually becomes part of the legal team, teaming up with Bradley Edwards. Bradley Edwards suspects that he's CIA, even writes it in his book, representing a bunch of these Epstein victims. Okay, this runs extremely deep. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to go deeper into the Iran-Contra network. We're going to show you how that worked, and it continues to this day, how that could also relate to 9/11. And then we're going to get into secret societies, the Zodiac Club, the importance of Epstein in these roundtable groups, and much more. Before we get back, go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now, make a purchase, support the broadcast, support free speech, and we're going to be back with the Alex Jones Show and more Epstein files after this. We're back. When we left off, we were talking about the arms dealing aspects of Epstein and his network, and that is so important because when you look at the financial records that are missing pre and post 9/11, I need you to consider a few things. Number 1, if you have this type of prior knowledge, I've seen people talking about the possibility of the put options and the insider trading, and that is absolutely there. We know that Epstein was getting all sorts of goody information inside on big global dollars. For instance, Lord Mandelson coming forward to him and saying, hey, we're about to have this $500 billion bailout for the European Union. Of course you could leverage information like that. We also have to remember that this is a time before DHS. This is a time before Michael Chertoff and the gang institute what? Body scanners in all of the different airports and other facilities they can get them into. Okay. My guess is when you see this network, you're going to see those type of deals with American companies, but well beyond that as well. And as far as the banking goes, well, we already know that Jess Staley has paid a bunch out via JP Morgan. That's far from the only institution that was running dirty money for Jeffrey Epstein and the gang. And again, hearkening back to that era of Iran-Contra, there was a particular bank that needs to be looked into. And shout out to Mike Benz because he made this connection. And it was BCCI. And BCCI, as well as being involved in Iran-Contra, was involved in the Osama bin Laden network. And remember, that network, folks, was part of U.S. intelligence when it opposed the Soviets. Okay, and BCCI, some people got arrested, some slaps on the wrist, just like Iran-Contra, and it went away. And I want to show you something. We actually celebrate our arms dealers. And in fact, Epstein never stopped dealing arms from Iran-Contra. That was Prince Andrew's gig. That's one of the reasons that he was the closest to Andrew in particular. Even Ehud Barak, okay, he wasn't just the prime minister, he was the Israeli defense minister. We're going to show you a clip that shows he was probably dealing arms with Ehud Barak as well in the late 90s, early 2000s. But to point out that we celebrate our arms dealers, Arnon Milken was one of the biggest in Hollywood for years. Okay, and one of the gun runners that he worked with, and of course, they worked with Israel. In fact, if you don't know, in the Iran-Contra affair, it was Israel that bought the weapons from Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, then shipped them down to South America. It was us that would then ship up the drugs and any other contraband cargo we wanted to, and then pay them off on the black market after the fact. A little guy named Sidney Pollack, and Sidney Pollack is kind of making the rounds these days. You'll know when you see him. Because Eyes Wide Shut has a resurgence with these Epstein files, and he's the bad guy in Eyes Wide Shut. He wasn't just an actor, he was also another big director in Hollywood. Now, I want to talk about this video we're playing. Louis Black talked about his dinner with Jeffrey Epstein, okay? And essentially, we're going to show the clip where he talks about it, but he talks about a brief interaction with Epstein where Epstein is showing him that he is an arms dealer. Now, I just want to get one quick other note. He went with a comedian named Bobby Slayton, okay? Now, Bobby Slayton is in the emails. He seems to be very friendly with the Epstein gang, and he's in one of the coded emails, the pizza emails. So I'm just going to say this to everybody. There's a lot going on with the coded language. From the pizza, I get it, to the jerky, to the grape soda. You go on and on and on. I would tell people to be careful because this one, for instance, is Bobby flying into New York as a comedian. Okay, remember that. Saying this to Groff, leaving tomorrow morning early, and yes, of course, we'll be there at 4. You need a pizza or anything. Now, I don't think that that's a young girl. I don't think that he's picking up women for Epstein. Again, he's not in the modeling industry. It's probably drugs. Okay. And she goes, ha, 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 ha. I don't need a pizza, but thank you in big letters for offering with the big old smiley face. Okay. That's what I imagine in that email. But we're going to go to Louis Black and we're going to show you how, again, Epstein seemed to be arms dealing in that same time period, late 90s, early 2000s, that, we have this whole situation with 9/11 and the war on terror.
And it was the kind of thing you go into when we got here, it's weird from the beginning because it's like you go in and he's got a whiteboard and there's all of this stuff drawn on it. And he goes, you want me to tell you what that is? And I go, yeah, well, sure, Bobby and I. He goes, I had the Israeli defense minister here last night for dinner, and then he's got me and Bobby Slayton. I mean, what kind of a fucking, are you shitting me? And then he said, and so we were talking about, he was showing me what kind of defense systems Israel would use in case of attack.
Wow.
And I thought, what? First up, what is the Israeli defense minister? What the fuck is the matter? Why would you tell me this is already, now it's weird.
Yes.
Yeah. Nothing else is weird, but I know this was like a honk, something is wrong in this house.
Yeah.
Apologize about the language. forgot how graphic it got. I will say this. I talked about the fact, and we're going to move on from the arms dealing to the secret society stuff and the financial stuff. These guys are bigots. There are not only N-bomb emails, one about a snipe hunt, okay, and they're protecting the senders, but there's also a meme dropping the N-bomb. And this shows you that this class of people, we're not a part of it. You and I are not a part of it. And this is why, first of all, you'll never hear the left talk about those emails and demand that they get redacted. They won't talk about the outward racism. For instance, there's literally an email that I could read here. I don't know if we're going to have time. Maybe I will fish it out, where he's talking to Masha Durkova about hiring people for their businesses by finding genetically Jewish people only, making them take 23andMe tests, okay? And then if you score 98%, then you get to go to a party where they recruit you. These people are weirdos. And it's not just the genetics and the eugenics and the transhumanism. We could get into the Ben Goertzel emails, the AI children, the whole nine. It is a society of people that have been around for a very long time. In fact, I didn't even know that this society existed. Let's get into it. It is the Zodiac Club email. So once again, this is 2010. We're not allowed to know who it's from. Just got a note from Bob Prairie, who asked me if I thought Murray Gell-Mann would be a good candidate for the Zodiac. As you know, so Epstein knows a little bit about this club. It's one of the last secret type societies. The Zodiac is one of the really cool ones where there are 12 members at any one time, and it's still very secret. They do really cool stuff. I'm very excited about this. But mostly, since they are very old, it's just dinners in exotic locations. I can tell you all 12 of the members because I can't tell you all 12 of the members because I don't know who they are, but I know Paul Volcker is one. Some guy named Howdy, whose family owns Stuyvesant Town, Bob Peary, and I think Tom Brokaw. Bob represents Cancer, the sign, not the month. You are a member until your death, but if you get senile, they can put you in eccentric orbit and not invite you to the meetings. Anyway, the only way to get in is if someone dies. There are obviously, no minorities, or women in the Zodiac Club. So no minorities or women. By the way, those are the records right there till 1915. We'll get into that in a minute. So they're not allowed. Let me know what you think. And then I want to know who it's from because they're sending them postcards and telling them they miss Jeffrey Epstein. So why is this important? Well, you look into this Zodiac Club. And again, 1868 to 1915, they have these records. And once again, it's this weird astrological stuff for some reason. But these are movers and shakers. I mean, J.P. Morgan, one of the members. Frank K. Sturgis, one of the early members, head of the New York Stock Exchange. Let's get into some of these people right now, okay? And that document, by the way, that was on archive.org. I didn't even fish that out when I found this, when I was hunting down certain things. I found one article on this over the years. I've talked about for years Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, things like Book and Snake, Scroll and Key. This is a New York City one, and if you notice the names, we'll get into them in a moment. But Paul Volcker, he was the former head of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Kind of a big deal. Kind of had some big financial connections. And this is what I talk about with the narrative management aspect of all these people, right? That this is it right in your face. It's the head of the Fed, part of this secret dinner site. And you only know, 3 members? So Robert Peary, this is a goodbye from good old Henry Kissinger when he passed. And he was a huge representative of the Rothschilds and the banking industries. And of course, he knew Epstein, Bob, because Epstein represented the Rothschilds. They mentioned Tom Brokaw. Okay, well, let's relate that to some Epstein relationships. You know, we just talked about J. Edward Epstein and him with narrative management and academia and in the media. We did the same with Noam Chomsky. How about Walter Cronkite? Remember Walter Cronkite, all over the files now, at the island, there for years. He was the most trusted man in America. After Walter Cronkite was gone, who was it? Who was the most trusted? Oh, it's either Tom Brokaw or Peter Jennings. You know, obviously, both paid liars, but that's just 3 of the 12. Now, the one from Stuyvesant Town, some people have sent me some names. I haven't been able to confirm it, so I've backed off of those just a bit. You know, I like to stick with what I can prove with these people. I think that that's extremely important. But in the arena now, again, of narrative management and science, you know, if you watch that segment of the Bannon interview, and I say segment because we've got 2 hours of a possible 15 to 18 hours, you got to wonder, since it was released during the DOJ would have to have that, maybe even more. They have to have all the raw footage. Why hasn't that been released yet? I'm waiting for it. Okay. This is Murray Gell-Mann. And again, if you listen to that, Epstein talks about the nature of math. He talks about the nature of physical reality, talks about it being outdated. You go through these emails, and when he's talking to a lot of these transhumanists, he's funding projects via Hanson Robotics. Hanson Robotics, again, something I was talking about literally 16 years. Man, it's 2026. I think I did like my first shows for InfoWars in like 2008. And Hanson Robotics was in Austin. And they had like little like toy robots and heads of famous people. Philip K. Dick's one of them. And I'd play those videos on air. So here again would be another person in that science arena. But getting back to the occult aspects, some people were asking me whether or not the sundial on the Epstein facility may have something to do with the Zodiac Club. All I can say is this. Instead of 12 seats right there, you've got 13 different seats. But I don't know, kind of weird to have that sundial there in the first place. Okay? So luckily we do have a little extra time to delve into a bunch of the other stuff in these files. Why don't we start with narrative management? And, you know, I talked about aspects of the media and aspects of Epstein. And obviously, look, you know, Bannon's all throughout those emails. I know Alex talked about it a little yesterday. Bannon contacts Epstein to take out Mnuchin and Jerome Powell in 2018. Okay? There are two different pictures, and I think they're two separate residences. We know none of them are Zorro Ranch, but Epstein's got framed pictures of him and Bannon in the house on one of his desks. Okay? This guy had a lot of people that were narrative management folks. And I'll just throw this. This is Jason Bermas' Speculation Town. Remember when Megyn Kelly caught all that flack for talking about somebody that she knew that didn't consider, Epstein a quote-unquote pedophile? Folks, we've got the documentation on the 14-year-olds through 16. In fact, you can go watch now the house manager that was selling the black book talking about Ghislaine Maxwell going to different website depositories from girls around the world by specific region, and they're like 16. There's no doubt they were doing those things. But here's some more narrative management via that modeling world. And this woman actually, she kind of got out ahead of it, or tried to. And that would be Faith Cates. No one's talking about this either. This is Next Model Management founder. And she retired probably because of emails like this one, where they're talking about what? Newsweek articles. Have you seen that? I know it comes out Monday. They're very thankful that Charlie Sheen is in the news with his tiger blood in 2011 and Gaddafi and what they're doing there. Just anything to get away. They're talking about they're planting more stories for the week. And the Newsweek piece will be the following Monday. And then they talk about paying thousands of dollars for a good story. And don't worry, they're also going to take care of makeup. We also, I think this is going to be here we go. Great. This is the TMZ email where Zuckerman suggested shorter and punchier, no attack on the press, pled guilty to solicitation, no tabloid exaggeration of pedophilia. Jeffrey Epstein paid a price. No allegations of minors since 2005. Okay? These people all knew, and they all worked with him anyway. Even when we get into the transhumanism stuff, although, I mean, do we want to do this email? Let's see. Here's the AI machines that they want to build like children. And one of the aspects is here, they talk about AGI conferences. This is 2013. All right, now I might have been talking about more than artificial intelligence and transhumanism during that time period. Alex Jones, absolutely. But the general populace still doesn't even know what artificial general intelligence is. And they're talking about funding it and growing it and growing, a 3-year-old AGI into a 4-year-old AGI. Let's see. This is the one we want to go to, right? Is this it? Roger Schenck. Oh yeah, this is the more detailed version of that email. No, we did. There's Ben Gortzel. I thought is this the Ben Gortzel email? Ben Gortzel, for those that don't know, again, another huge transhumanist. No, it looks like it reset on me. Let's search him. But he's throughout the emails, actually talking to him about people like Ray Kurzweil, Martine Rothblatt that I've done on this show. But this is the one that really got people's attention. Now, first and foremost, when this dinner occurs with people like Katie Couric and Prince Andrew, etc., he's already been convicted. They already know who he is. So he's talking about Richard Branson, all right? And essentially, he's actually kind of making fun of Prince Andrew for maybe having a speck of humanity. Not a big fan of the royal family. They certainly don't see us as, at their level. Prince Charles, pretty disgusting individual. Obviously, Andrew, very disgusting individual. At least he was a little shy on the clones, okay? Katie Couric was here, and we were talking about, I want to start cloning things. Me, and this is, of course, Epstein talking. And with certain people, Prince Andrew got upset because he was all, if it had a conscience, could you kill it for spare parts? Kind of a la, the Island movie. And by the way, Michael Bay, who produced that film, very connected to Epstein. If you saw the Alex Jones interview with Juliette Bryant, she continually talked about Michael Bay. Getting back to this, Epstein says, and I said, I'll make it without a head. Would that make you feel better? And Katie Couric, I thought, was going to start to vomit. It's a big joke to these guys. Richard Branson, ha 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 ha. So this again is one of those emails, and this is what's important, because transgenderism, separating you from your biological reality, which is a part of your spiritual reality. Believe that. It's part of your everything, mind, body, and soul. If they can separate you from that, they can continually do so on a multitude of levels. And transhumanism spans from things like, quote unquote, gene therapy and mRNA, okay, to the transhumanism, to the hormones. I mean, there's a reason that you have all these shootings now with those people, because those drugs are messing with their minds the same as the psychotropic drugs, and sometimes they're on those as well. But this is the one, I mean, it's hard. I'm kind of glad that it's not. We'll blow it down a little bit so people can, I'm not even going to read it, but it's pretty disturbing. They're talking about sexual pleasure with the quote unquote male to female trans person that keeps their male genitalia. But then at the very end, yeah, this is it. Let's 3-year-olds. I'm not sure about it, but boy, we're getting there. These people are insane. Okay. We'll skip over that one. This was the email I was talking about. That insanity. Okay. So this, and by the way, everybody loves to play up to Jeffrey Epstein on how smart he was. And you watch that interview with Bannon. Epstein absolutely thought he was the smartest guy in the room every time. Go watch it. For instance, when Bannon's talking about economics on that one, he names like 10 different economists and whether or not they would have a better take on the disaster after the subprime and anybody could see it coming. And Epstein, when he's asked, he's like, well, any of these guys? And he's like, I'm sure there's somebody, but I can't think of them right now. Just like Epstein knows that he's evil. When Bannon asks him whether a truthful and honest organization should take money from him, he literally puts his tongue in his cheek and leads to the side. He has to think about it. He's like, well, I'm evil, so maybe not. That's a prelude to the devil comment. But again, just to show how nutty these people are. It's 2017. It's how people think. I found a criteria to find smart people. somebody recruiting for him. The more Jew you are, the smarter you are. You said you're 98% Jew. You're very smart. My boss is 78% Jew. He is super smart. Less smart than you are. I have a close friend business partner who's 99.3% Jew. He is crazily smart. And this is where it just gets over the top, where you realize they're not joking around. We take all Jewish people, sourcing can be done through relatives, ask them to do a 23andMe test, do an event for everyone who is 98% Jew, all of them not religious. And that's the key part. And he says, does this make sense, right? Think about that. Now, anybody can convert to Judaism. They don't want you. They don't want you to have a spiritual aspect whatsoever. I mean, this is Eugenics 101, right? I mean, to me, this is like maybe someone's going to break out the crane measure, the cranium measure, see how big your brain is. It's ridiculous. But they certainly don't want you if you actually have a spiritual side, because they want sociopaths. They want psychopaths. This is the do as thou wilt society. They are social Darwinists through and through. They believe they should rule because they do. And it's a viper's nest in these emails. And I am waiting for the next round to see what we can find out via 9/11 and beyond. I mean, this is the real world laid out. And right now you're seeing more and more mainstream media pieces. You know, Alex mentioned earlier, the United Nations. Yeah, great organization. I mean, Epstein talking about the Trilateral Commission, the UN, the Illuminati, all in one, the NGOs, right? They're now, it does look like a global conspiracy. And they may have broken some laws here. I saw The Guardian. Oh, it does prove a global conspiracy. Sort of. There's no sort of about it. We've been talking about these roundtable organizations for years. In fact, go watch my film produced right here at Infowars.com right now for free, called Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. Now, we put that out in the middle of 2010. So there was very little known about Epstein other than the prosecution, what he was found guilty of, because the media wasn't doing the stories. It lays out that network. It lays out the network in detail. You can watch it for free. You can share it now, and you can continue to support this broadcast and Infowars.com and Alex Jones. Again, this is a real fight, and you can tell. I showed you the narrative management. That's a small speck of what these people do. And they are the same people that literally prey on not only the populace as a predator class, but children. Let that sink in. Children. So, folks, once again, I want to thank you for joining me for this 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. Please follow me at Jason Bermas everywhere. Go check me out on YouTube, where all the documentary films are free. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Shade the Motion Picture, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. And remember, it is not about left or right, always about right and wrong. Go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now. Support the broadcast.